Chapter 43. Surprisingly, Bibwit Hart did not have a pair of gemstone fire crystals tucked anywhere in his scholar's robe, so they had to build a fire the old-fashioned way, with the suns and a pile of dead branches. Volcanic plains were behind them, and they had made a camp next to a wide river en route to the Valley of Mushrooms. Dodge wrapped a dampened leaf around Bibwit's burn and tied it with a strong vine. Bibwit tested the movement of his arm, grimacing and perhaps making more of his injury than was necessary, because Dodge, with a quick glance at General Doppelganger, said, "We might have to cut it off." Bibwit fell still, too horrified to speak. "You can tutor just as well with one arm as with two, can't you?" Bibwit's mouth opened and closed, but nothing came out. Dodge and General Doppelganger sputtered with laughter. "I'm just teasing Bibwit," Dodge said. "He'll be fine." "Oh, ha ha," Bibwit said uneasily. "A bit of levity to ease the burden we're under. Yes, ha ha." But he hugged his injured arm close until Dodge and the general settled into sleep. Regaining his usual composure, he took a seat next to the princess. "Now, Alice, we shall have that lesson of ours that keeps getting put off. Lucky for us, I have memorized most of the necessary books." Alice nodded, but she was in no mood for a lesson. The day itself had been a lesson in survival. "I will close my eyes for a moment," continued Bibwit, "to file through all that's in my head for the appropriate material. It'll just take a moment." But as soon as the tutor shut his eyes, he began to snore, his ears opening and closing with each breath. Alice smiled a tired smile and pulled the ends of his robe about him as a blanket. She moved to the other side of him to let him sleep undisturbed. As it had long ago, on that first night with Quigley and the orphans in the London alley, her mind was plagued by too much to allow her any rest. How did it work when I was young? Her ability to conjure objects from the strength and depth of her imagination, how had it worked? She'd been lucky with the muzzle. She hadn't intended to conjure such a thing, had only tried to imagine Dodge safely out of the spider's sticky clutches. Hatter sat beyond the fire's glow, cleaning his weapons, his top hat beside him. He removed first his left wrist bracelet and then his right, and set about wiping their blades with a leaf. Alice had never seen a milliner without his bracelets. He looked so much like an ordinary Wonderlander. Indeed, especially now, as Hatter paused in his work to strip off his long outer coat and lay it on the ground beside him. Without his coat and the telltale weapons, there was nothing in his appearance to distinguish him from any normal adult male Wonderlander. He must have hopes, dreams, loves, and sorrows outside his duty, as anyone does. Strange that I should know so little about him when he has devoted his life to protecting my family. He caught her looking at him. She smiled in apology, as if she had been intruding. Hatter went back to his cleaning. The thing about when she was young, she didn't remember her imagination having to work. It just was. "Hatter?" "Yes, Princess." "When you're fighting in a battle, what do you think about?" Hatter considered. "Nothing, Princess. Nothing at all." "So you don't tell yourself, 'I'm going to throw my top hat and then I'm going to attack with the blades on my wrists,' or anything of that sort?" "No." "No," Alice echoed. "Of course not. It just happens. Your body knows what to do." Hatter nodded. "It's unconscious. To will something into being, the willing must be so deep down that no self-doubt is possible. The imaginative power itself must be a given, a thing already proven that cannot be disbelieved." Lunar hours passed, and at first Alice was all too aware of her efforts to conjure, all too aware of the items she attempted to imagine into being. A platter, a sword, a crown. A platter, a sword, a crown. She repeated these words over and over again to herself. No crown materialized. Part of a platter did form, but quickly vanished. A sword appeared, but in outline only, plain and without detail, as if the weapon had not been precisely envisioned. With time, the fire died down into a heap of glowing embers. Alice's mind cleared. While she was in this trance-like state, a large glass cover, akin to one you might see over a cake in a bakery, formed in the air. Alice looked at it without surprise. She tilted her head to the left, and the glass cover tilted left. She tilted her head to the right, and the cover tilted right. Then, without moving at all, she brought it down over the fire. Robbed of oxygen, the embers fizzled out. The glass cover dissolved into the air. Alice beamed, for not only had she conjured, but she had controlled her imagination in a way she never had before. "I'll need to practice. I'll need to..." Oh, Hatter was watching her, had witnessed this first controlled exercise of her powerful imagination. He bowed his head in respect. Then came a final honking snore, and Bibwit awoke, shivering and hugging himself. It is chilly without the fire, isn't it? Chapter 44. With the queendom's looking glasses obliterated, Red again turned her anger on Jack of Diamonds. I grant you a leniency that others don't enjoy. Why? Because it's supposed to benefit me. I let you believe you're your own boss. In exchange, you're to provide me with Elysian intelligence. As queen, I command the better end of all deals, and it doesn't fill me with glee, Lord Diamond, that you've been profiting from treachery. Your imperial... Red made a shooting motion with her hand, and Jack slammed against the wall of the observation dome. The cat's tail whisked back and forth, happy and playful. What am I to do with you? Red asked. Maybe you could... Jack began. The cat raised a paw. I know. It was a rhetorical question, fools. You don't answer it. Since when do I need help making anyone suffer? This time, the cat and Jack of Diamonds knew better than to answer. Red stepped up to Jack and stroked his wig. She held one of its long curls against her palm, studying it for a moment. With sudden ferocity, she yanked the curl from the wig and tossed it away from her. The lock of hair lay on the floor, growing in size and hairiness. It grew and grew, developing arms and legs until it stood at twice Jack's height. Lord Diamond, say hello to a beast of a wig. Red yawned. Before Jack could offer a greeting, the beast dealt him a stinging blow to the stomach. He doubled over, straining for air. The wig beast picked him up and tossed him across the room. He landed with a thud worthy of his girth, and with a single bound, the wig beast was beside him, lifting him to his feet, holding him upright with one wiggy limb and slapping him with the other. The cat purred, a wide grin on his face as he watched Jack of Diamonds suffer. But his enjoyment was interrupted by a sharp-as-a-claw piercing of Red's voice raised in anger and disbelief. Red had turned her imagination's eye on Alice. She should have seen nothing. Alice should have been part of the void, but instead she saw the princess, Hatter Madigan, and the others walking through the charred and molten landscape of the volcanic plains. Not dead, she screeched. Alice, not dead. Jack heard the words too, but it took a moment for his addled brain to understand their meaning. Between slugs from the wig beast, he managed to say, They're going to the looking glass maze. Red held up a hand, and the wig beast halted. I must be getting soft, Lord Diamond, if I think you could have said anything worth listening to. It was lucky for Jack that Red had shrugged off the lessons Bibwit tried to teach her in adolescence. Jack was quick to understand that his knowledge of the looking glass maze could save his life. But he could tell her as little as necessary. His future health and safety might depend on leaking such valuable intelligence to Red. The looking glass maze, your imperial viciousness. By passing through the maze, Alice will reach her full potential of strength and imaginative power and be able to defeat you. But I have the heart crystal. She can't reach her full potential without that. I'm only repeating what I heard from Bibwit Hart, your imperial viciousness. He shouldn't have mentioned Bibwit. Red bristled. Jack cast a quick glance at the wig beast. It was perfectly still, as if it had never been alive. So far, so good. What if I passed through the maze instead of her? Red asked. Aha, very clever, your imperial viciousness. If you pass through the maze, then you'll be that much more powerful. I'm sure Alice won't be able to defeat you then. What Jack of Diamonds knew of the looking glass maze could fit in a Gwynnoc's third nostril, which was very little. As a boy, he'd often heard his mother recall in bitter tones how Princess Genevieve had passed through the maze to become queen. She didn't know that becoming queen was not just a matter of navigating the maze. None of the Diamond clan had been tutored by Bibwit Hart, so none of them knew that the only person for whom the looking glass maze was intended could enter it. But like many young men who grow up as privileged as Jack of Diamonds, he didn't suspect his own ignorance. We'll see if what you say is true, Red said. Bring me in Queendom Spiramus. The walrus toddled into the dome. Here it is, your imperial viciousness. In Queendom... The book flew from his flippers, hovered in the air before Red as she thumbed through its pages, searching for mention of the looking glass maze. She found none. She saw pages torn from the book and her own words in Bibwit's handwriting. Bah! She swatted the book and it flew at the walrus, but the wadly fellow ducked and the book hit the floor and skidded out the dome and down the hall. I'll get it, your imperial viciousness, said the walrus butler, and hurried after the book, never able to leave Red's company fast enough. Red strolled up to Jack, all the more frightening for her nonchalance. And now, my unworthy servant, you are going to tell me where the looking-glass maze is. But I don't know where it is. Red's fingers twitched, and Jack thought he saw the wig beast move. The Elysians don't know either, he said quickly. The caterpillars have to tell them. The caterpillars, those annoying, oversized larvae. Red had tried to do away with them and their outdated prophesying when she took control of the kingdom. She didn't need those things breeding dissent with their predictions. But every time she tried to attack them, they saw her coming and vanished like smoke. So she had exercised her rage on their beloved Valley of Mushrooms. But what to do now? A raid on the valley would not serve her purpose. I have decided to let Alice meet with the caterpillars, she announced. We'll maintain close surveillance on that goody-goody little heart. And when she leads us to the looking-glass maze's location, we'll attack, and I will enter it myself. Cat, bait the seekers. But what about Lord Diamond? The feline whined. He may prove useful yet. Jack gave Red's furry assassin a taunting little smile. The cat was to blame for his trouble, the bruises he felt forming all over his body. He would have to return the favor somehow. I see you don't treasure your lives as much as I'd supposed, Cat, or you would have obeyed my order by now, Red said. As the cat sulked off to bait the seekers, Red again focused her imagination's eye on Alice. How wonderfully cruel it was going to be. Miss Prissy Hart would serve as personal guide to the looking-glass maze and thereby become agent of her own downfall. How deliciously nasty. The cat could hear the seeker's frenzied screeching even before he reached the end of the corridor, shouldered upon the heavy door, and stepped inside the chamber carved out of Mount Isolation itself. It was impossible to hear his own footfalls or breathing because the seeker's cries, like the sound of pain itself, were so loud. The chamber was dimly lit by faint glowing crystals embedded in the walls. Hundreds of cages hung from the ceiling, with several seekers in each of them, Red's bloodhounds, bred out of her distrust and paranoia, creatures with bird of prey bodies and the heads of blood-sucking insects. Walking up and down the chamber, the cat stopped beneath each cage to wave Alice's London wedding dress, a souvenir from his raid on the Elysian headquarters. He teased the seekers with its scent, and they pressed eager faces against the bars of their cages. The baiting complete, the cat flipped a lever in the door and a wall retracted, a wall that from the outside looked like part of a mountain. The cages fell open, and with wild shrieks, the seekers flew out into the night on the hunt.